How often have you stood by, watching a woman pour her soul into a man who barely glanced her way, while you, the one who genuinely saw her worth, became a shadow in the background? And the harder you tried to show up, the faster her interest vanished. The more you showed you cared, the more distant she became. And the more accessible you made yourself, the more invisible you felt. It stings, doesn't it? But let's rip the bandage off. Here's what most never dare to say out loud. Women aren't captivated by constant effort. They aren't magnetized by the guy who over-delivers. What grips their curiosity is the man they can't completely read. The man who leaves room for wonder. Men with self-respect know a deeper truth, that holding back, standing tall with discipline and clear boundaries, kindles desire more intensely than 100 sweet messages ever could. Stick around, because we're about to dive into the real, underlying reasons why men who hold their ground seem to command admiration. Not because they play games, but because they've mastered the art of protecting their own worth. And if you absorb this fully, you'll see why some men inspire devotion, while others beg just to be noticed. Let's unravel this, piece by piece. A man's attention isn't a donation, yet too many men give it away like it costs nothing. The daily good morning texts, the likes, the endless comments, all gifted with no return. But here's what most don't realize. Attention is currency. And the moment a woman picks up her phone, she's already rich in it. Before noon, she's flooded with compliments and DMs from men hoping for a chance. So how do you stand out in a world drowning in digital affection? Simple. Be the one she can't easily access. A man of true value may initiate once. He'll approach, drop a spark of interest, show that he's present. But then, he retreats. Not because he's shy, but because he understands the power in restraint. When attention becomes predictable, it loses its spark. But when it's rare, it gains gravity. A man who is selective becomes unforgettable. But here's the trap. Most men retreat not from strength, but from fear. They ghost out of insecurity, not self-respect. A man who truly respects himself steps back not to play hard to get, but because he won't exhaust his energy on someone who doesn't value it. That's the difference. Confidence is the fuel that makes this effective. Ignoring someone isn't powerful unless it's rooted in real, grounded self-belief. A man of substance isn't rattled by a pretty face. He doesn't stumble over his words when she makes eye contact. He doesn't script his conversations in advance. Why? Because he's anchored. His confidence isn't surface-level bravado. It's built on knowing what he brings to the table. Where others go silent out of fear, he does so because he already said what needed to be said. He approached her, made his move, and if the vibe isn't right, he's out. No drama, no second guesses. He doesn't stay to prove a point. He walks away because he doesn't negotiate his value. And that's the kind of silence that echoes in a woman's mind. Because this man isn't passive, he acts boldly. He makes the first move, but never runs after someone who's unsure. He's brave enough to risk rejection, but wise enough not to chase where he's not wanted. And when a man like that goes quiet, it strikes differently. It's not emptiness, it's strength. Women pick up on this energy fast. It's different from the needy silence of men hoping for crumbs of attention. This silence is charged with intention, not desperation. But there's another layer. The man who's building something bigger than a relationship doesn't have time to beg for anyone's interest. A man consumed by a vision, who wakes up hungry for progress, doesn't scroll through her feed wondering if she's thinking about him. He's crafting the life she'll eventually wish she were part of, whether she realizes it or not. While others are glued to their phones, he's executing. While some wait hours for replies, he's out there creating momentum. His time is accounted for. His calendar doesn't revolve around her availability. And that absence? It speaks volumes. Not because he's trying to be cryptic, but because he's just not waiting around. This is where most guys drop the ball. They treat a woman's interest as their North Star and abandon their purpose in the process. But without a direction of your own, you'll always orbit someone else's world. For this man, purpose isn't a hobby. It's the core of his identity. It's not something he uses to avoid relationships. It's what gives those relationships meaning when they do happen. And that, ironically, is what draws women in the most. Because his life doesn't pause for anyone's attention. And that urgency to build something real? It's magnetic. Before we dive into the next truth, ask yourself, are you becoming the man people chase? Or the man who constantly chases validation? Stay with me. What's coming next might just shift your whole perspective. There's something quietly terrifying to people, especially women, about a man who's completely fine on his own. Not pretending, not masking loneliness, genuinely at peace in solitude. Most guys chase companionship out of fear. They dread the silence, the empty bed, the stillness. So they latch onto anyone who shows them warmth, just to feel less alone. But not this man. He doesn't rush into relationships just to fill a void. He uses the quiet to sharpen his discipline, to build his future, to expand his mindset. While others scroll endlessly, he's evolving. While they chase fleeting connections, he's becoming someone no one can ignore. That kind of inner stillness, that level of emotional self-reliance, hits differently. A woman senses it. She realizes this isn't a guy who's waiting for someone to complete him. He's already whole, and that makes him unpredictable, difficult to influence, impossible to own. That's what makes his silence so profound. It's not cold, it's not calculated. It's just who he is. He doesn't need to explain himself or beg for understanding. If she walks away, he doesn't spiral. He moves forward, with or without her. And that calm detachment, that's power. But let's keep going. Because here's something most men never figure out. Your peace is a luxury, and not everyone deserves access to it. When a woman stirs up unnecessary drama, a man of low self-worth gets pulled right in. He tries to fix things, defend himself, clarify everything. He spends hours in mental battles just to prove he's not the bad guy. But the man who truly knows his value doesn't waste breath on storms he didn't start. He doesn't fight every battle. He doesn't raise his voice to match chaos. When the energy turns toxic, he exits. Not because he's afraid to stand up for himself, but because he knows silence can be the most effective response. He understands something subtle. When you engage with disrespect, you normalize it. So when she tests him, starts arguments, throws emotional bait, or seeks attention through tension, he simply disappears from the noise, not out of weakness, but out of clarity. Because he knows one thing for certain. Anyone who tries to disturb your peace doesn't deserve your presence. This is where most men mess up. They believe arguing shows strength. They confuse reaction with masculinity. They think being loud means being powerful. but in truth, the man she can't easily provoke. The man who refuses to be pulled into emotional games. That's the man she ends up respecting. The man who teaches her without raising his voice. That immature behavior creates space, not connection. Because distance isn't punishment. It's a boundary. And boundaries, when enforced with quiet strength, become unforgettable. Now let's talk communication. The man who speaks clearly, with intention, not performance, leaves no room for confusion. He doesn't play it safe by hiding behind polite texts and overused emojis. He doesn't pretend to be her just friend for months, hoping she'll eventually notice him. He's transparent. He expresses interest. He makes his move with confidence. But here's the key. He never over-explains. He doesn't repeat himself to be understood. If the energy shifts, if games start, if things become vague, he doesn't chase clarity. He becomes silent. That silence, it's not fear. It's resolution. Because she knows this kind of man doesn't vanish due to insecurity. He walks away because he doesn't tolerate confusion. His time, his presence, his attention, they all have value. And once she realizes that playing games equals being replaced, the dynamic shifts quickly. But this is where most men go wrong. They think being direct means flooding her with messages, explaining their intentions over and over, trying to make her see their sincerity. But sincerity doesn't beg. It doesn't grovel. It stands firm once, then leaves the rest up to her. True masculine energy doesn't talk itself into relevance. It shows up once, then moves on if it's not matched. And finally, the core. The one thing that makes all of this real. The mindset. You can't fake this. You either believe it or you don't. A man who truly sees himself as valuable doesn't have to say it out loud. It's in the way he walks into a room. It's in the way he looks people in the eye. It's in how little he needs to impress anyone. Even a woman he finds stunning. He doesn't lose himself in her presence. He doesn't elevate her above himself just because she's attractive. He's steady, relaxed, grounded, not because he thinks he's perfect, but because he knows he's rare. That kind of presence, it's magnetic. And it's dangerous to anyone trying to manipulate it. Women are used to men folding under pressure, trying too hard, overcompensating, treating them like prizes they're unworthy of winning. But this man, he is the prize. And not as a catchphrase or internet trend. He lives it. His life isn't centered around being liked. It's rooted in purpose, in peace, in power. And that's why ignoring women isn't some tactic he uses. It's just a side effect of having more important things to do. He's not out to hurt anyone. He's not cruel. He's not arrogant. But he knows what matters to him. And if someone doesn't respect that, he walks. When you become that kind of man, you don't have to demand respect. You receive it without asking. Because once you stop chasing what doesn't value you, everything about your life changes. And the world starts chasing you instead.